In our society, we revere billionaires, don't we?
Greatest entrepreneur of this generation, Elon Musk.
Hey guys.
In fact, we keep asking billionaires for advice on how everyone else should live.
Guys, we just landed in Beverly Hills, in one of the richest cities in the entire world. I'm gonna be going around one of the wealthiest shopping centers out on Rodeo Drive to ask holiday shoppers how they created their wealth, how they grew multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar net worths, and how you can do the exact same thing and start your path to becoming financially free.
I mean, just look at the reverence. Like, tell us your secrets. Tell us how things work in the real world, you grown-up daddy.
How old were you when you became a millionaire?
You have to ask a millionaire.
What do you mean?
I'm a billionaire.
Extreme wealth literally damages your brain's ability to be able to understand other people. And that's not an exaggeration, that's not a metaphor, that's a fact. The very psychological mechanisms that help someone accumulate extreme wealth, which includes things like confidence, risk tolerance, or self-belief, and they are the same mechanisms that destroy someone's ability to understand how life works for everyone else. Those people, they're not evil and they're not stupid. They're just trapped in a kind of perception, a cognitive fortress that makes inequality invisible to them and makes meritocracy feel real.
I decided I had to give it a shot. I didn't think I'd regret trying and failing. And I suspected I would always be haunted by a decision to not try at all.
It makes structural change seem dangerous to them because you don't want to rock the boat, because it's worked for them. The boat works for them, even though everybody else is freezing in the sea. And this effect is measurable and consistent, and it happens to almost everyone that gets rich.
Hi, I'm Mark Cuban, and I'm about to give you some advice on how to be just a little bit richer than you are today.
Understanding this fact is not about blame. It's about recognizing that human perception operating under conditions of extreme wealth or power creates predictable distortions. Let me show you what happens when you get really, really rich. But let's start with the Nobel Prize winners, Daniel Kahnemann and Amos Tversky, who named something key to this called the availability heuristic. And here's what that means. Your brain judges how the world works based on the examples most available to you, which means essentially the things you personally experience most often. So in one of their classic studies, they asked people, in English, are there more words that start with the letter K or more words that have K as a third letter? And almost all participants were certain that words that start with the letter K were more common. They were wrong. There are actually 3 times more words with K as the third letter. But words that start with K come to mind more easily, right? Kangaroo, kitchen, kite. So people's brains assumed they must be more frequent. And this is essentially how the availability heuristic works. If you can easily recall examples of something, your brain assumes it happens more often than it actually does. And that's a devastating part for billionaires. Because when people repeatedly see their effort followed by success in their own lives, they dramatically underestimate how often effort fails for others. Like, their internal model of reality becomes statistically warped because failure is no longer in their data set. If you only ever flipped heads on a coin, you'd start to believe that tails wasn't an option. And if somebody told you that they got tails, you'd probably think they were doing it wrong. Like, well, have you tried flipping harder? Oh yeah, you're throwing it wrong. You need to throw it different. I don't even know how you manage to keep getting tails that often.
What's the greatest piece of advice that you received throughout your career?
Wow. When someone says no to you, what they mean is try harder.
I love that. I always like to say that no does not mean no, it just means not yet.
Exactly. It just means try harder.
So when a billionaire is presented with somebody that struggles, they don't think, what part of the system has trapped them? They think, what did they do wrong? Because I do this stuff and it all works out for me, so they must be doing something wrong.
We all get to choose our life stories, and it's the choices that define us. You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure.
This isn't about arrogance. This is what they have learned from their own direct experience, because your brain is just updating its model of reality based on the data it's been fed day after day after day. And there's literally hundreds of studies that prove that active blindness occurs due to privilege. Studies like the one in the early 2000s, where social psychologist Dacher Keltner at Berkeley began studying what power does to the brain.
Does power corrupt? Does it unleash our problematic tendencies? The answer, regrettably, is it does to all of us in really striking ways.
Across dozens of experiments, him and his colleagues found that when people felt powerful, they become worse at reading other people's emotions, worse at imagining life from somebody else's point of view.
If you give people a little bit of power and experiment, you say, you're in charge and we're paying you more to do this study than those two people over there, right? And I'm like, well, I knew that. I'm kind of a natural leader. If I have a little dose of power, I'm more likely to touch people inappropriately, swear, lie, cheat, steal, shoplift, have sexual affairs. I mean, most of the unethical tendencies come out of feeling too much power. Here are a couple of experiments that we did in our lab. 3 people at the University of Wisconsin came to the lab. We pointed to one of them and we said, you're in charge. Halfway into the study, we bring a plate of 5 delicious chocolate chip cookies, right? Right on the table in this small lab room. Everybody grabs a cookie. Our question was, because all groups leave that last cookie on the plate, our question was, who takes that 4th cookie? It's the high power person reaching over like, that's mine, buddy. My grad student coded how they ate, took us a few months. The high power person, randomly assigned, was more likely to be eating with their mouth open, lips smacking, and crumbs falling all over their sweaters. In California, there are pedestrian zones where you're supposed to stop for pedestrians. And so we positioned this poor Berkeley undergrad at the edge of a pedestrian zone, looking like, I want to go across, it's the law. We have a power scale of how powerful is your car, right? Are you driving this Dodge Colt? That's a 1. A Ford Taurus. There's the Civic. I think that's an Accord, and a Mercedes is the most powerful car. What we find is if you drive a poor car, they always stop for the pedestrian. But look at that. If you're driving that fancy car, 46% of the time, they blaze on through, right? And we have dozens of studies showing if I'm just feeling powerful, if I'm in charge of things, I just don't listen as carefully. I don't know what people are feeling as well. Regrettably, those tendencies then lead to the finding powerful people are more likely to stereotype other people, which is problematic. A powerful boss is more likely to stereotype a woman, a female employee.
Keltner's conclusion was power creates social distance because they stop needing to pay attention. And it makes sense, doesn't it, intuitively too. Like if you've ever worked a service job, you learn to read people fast. You have to. Your rent and life depends on it. But when you're powerful, the people around you adapt to you. They soften bad news. They manage your emotions. They tell you what you want to hear, and they sort out the problem quietly in the background. So essentially the human feedback loop breaks. They're insulated. And Keltner calls this the empathy gap of power.
When you think about how important perspective taking is to good, strong groups, and power is diminishing that ability, groups really want socially intelligent leaders. We gain power through what is good in human nature, but regrettably power decreases our social intelligence and really releases very often what is problematic in human behavior. A ton of data on those ideas.
The higher you go up, the less real the humans below you become. And you can see it really clearly sometimes in celebrities, because we're all obsessed with celebrities. But when somebody gets in a position of adoration or kind of like social power, you can see how untethered they get.
When you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice.
So another line of research would be from sociologist Michael Kraus, who studied how people from different socio-economic backgrounds explain success and failure. And what they found was the wealthier people are far more likely to explain outcomes in terms of personal traits, hard work, talent, motivation, discipline. Whereas poorer people and people who've experienced instability are far more likely to explain outcomes in terms of context, good or bad timing, structural help, barriers, good or bad luck. So why that difference? Well, because lived experience trains your brain to see more of the world. Yeah, newsflash, our own experiences are all we have to learn about the world. So if your effort usually leads to rewards in your own life, your brain concludes that basically the world is a meritocracy, right? And psychologists call this difference an attribution bias, because rich people develop what researchers describe as a more individualistic attribution style.
Your life, the life you author from scratch on your own, begins. What choices will you make?
My effort led to rewards, therefore the world is fair. Effort leads to rewards. If every door that you've ever approached opened automatically, you wouldn't think, well, I'm lucky. You'd think, I really do have just like excellent door energy.
I took the less safe path to follow my passion, and I'm proud of that choice.
And so if you put all of these effects together, and there are many more, but let's just use these, you can see clearly that power increases social distance. Wealth trains you to overestimate meritocracy and underestimate social barriers and constraints, which means billionaires are systematically, intellectually, and neurologically unable to understand the ups and downs and reality of 99.9% of the people in the world. They're not morally worse, they just see the world with blinkers on, gold-plated blinkers, which is why we shouldn't listen to them.
When it's tough, will you give up, or will you be relentless?
And it's how you end up with people who are genuinely, honestly, with no malice whatsoever, cannot fathom why somebody just can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or why can't you just budget better, or well, move to where the jobs are then.
Will you wilt under criticism, or will you follow your convictions?
Listening to a billionaire explain success is like listening to somebody describe a recipe when they've never had to grow, hunt, or pay for a single ingredient.
Will you play it safe, or will you be a little bit swashbuckling?
When we ask billionaires anything, but particularly to explain the world, we are really, and I can't stress this enough, not consulting experts. We're consulting people, I would just wish people in power could hear this, who've had their lives systematically removed from needing to understand anything. We all mistake uninterrupted success for insight. You know, I really do want to come up with a positive angle to end this video, but the reason why I'm talking it in detail like this is I don't think people fully see it. Maybe it just ends on insight. Okay, I'm running out of phone battery. Let's leave that for now.
With many of these billionaires, I've learned certain habits and mindsets that they have that allow them to operate on a completely different level from most people. Here are the 6 things that I learned from working with 94 different billionaires. First, they text more than they call. Billionaires know the value of a dollar, and they know the value of their time more than anyone I've ever worked with. Billionaires don't have time for phone calls. Jeff Bezos, he makes $2,500 a second. A phone call that takes away time from billionaires making money is not a good use of their time. I'm in the middle of 2 negotiations right now with 2 of these billionaires, completely over text. I'd much rather meet in person, they've got great offices, or talk on the phone or get a meal with them so I can learn, but nope, it's all over text message. If you are trying to find billionaires to work with, try texting them because they do not waste time. Takeaway number 2, billionaires are always on guard of being taken advantage of. This is also why it's hard to get in touch with billionaires. It's hard to have them as clients. They really trust no one because they've been taken advantage of. They've learned from that mistake, and new people entering into their sphere of influence puts them on guard because any new person that is coming into a billionaire's life typically